manufactured by TSMC. So as we can see, through a series of acquisitions and joint ventures, Jiaoxin is able to make x86 processors, but their target consumer base is currently China only, and it will probably remain that way. China is actively trying to reduce its dependence on foreign hardware and software, making everything in-house, and Jiaoxin is definitely one of the companies that will help them achieve this. The Jiaoxin Kaixian KX7000 has some pretty decent specs. 8 cores and 8 threads, which is more than enough for a modern CPU, although it doesn't have multi-threading like Intel and AMD CPUs would have. It has a boost clock of 3.6 GHz, well, at least for the CPU I have here anyway. I think some of the CPUs actually have slightly different clock speeds, weirdly enough. It has 4 MB of level 2 cache and 32 MB of level 3 cache. It supports DDR4 and DDR5 memory, PCI Express 4.0 with 24 PCIe lanes. And of course, for it to be a decent working CPU, we need all our important instruction sets like x86, x64, AVX, and AVX2. As the name suggests, this Asus XC-KX700M D4 motherboard requires DDR4 memory. Although, as we just said, it does support DDR5 as well, but that would depend on your motherboard. So we will install 16GB of Micron 2666MHz DDR4 RAM as two 8GB sticks. It turns out that this motherboard is quite picky when it comes to RAM, which we'll talk about a bit later. So let's just line up the RAM and get that connected for the time being. Now we need a CPU cooler, and like the RAM, it's pretty easy not to use AMD, Intel or Nvidia here. I actually forgot to buy a cooler, so I'm going to use this Thermalright cooler from the test bench. Now you may be wondering which CPU cooler you can use on this motherboard, as it's a Jiaoxin socket. But luckily for us, they've actually kept it really simple by using the standard Intel LGA 1700 socket mount. So any LGA 1700 compatible cooler would work here. I guess it does make sense to use the same LGA 1700 mounting, as the socket is literally an LGA 1700 socket, but just not the exact same one that Intel uses. So now let's go ahead and install the CPU cooler. We can plug in the 4-pin fan connector, but as for the ARGB header, well, there's not really anywhere for that to go, so we won't be having any RGB lighting on our fan here. For the SSD, we can use any NVMe or SATA drive, as the motherboard does have an M.2 NVMe slot. I would imagine it's PCIe 4.0, but then again, it's kind of hard to find information about it. For this, however, I'm going to use a 2TB SATA SSD because it has my games in it already. It would actually be harder here to use Intel or AMD for storage. Like, I know Intel made quite a few SSDs, but apparently AMD also has a branded SSD as well. Like, I've never seen this before. Now time for the case. We've gone with the NZXT H5 Flow. No particular reason, but I think it was on sale at the time. It fits standard size ATX motherboards, so it might look a little big for our micro ATX board, but it should at least fit our graphics card, which is pretty long. For the power supply, we have the MSI Mag A650BN, and it's a fairly decent, but also decently priced 650 watt power supply. It's not modular, so it can be a bit difficult to work with, but it has all the connectors we need for our PC. So let's install our power supply and screw it into the case. To install our motherboard, we'll put in the I/O shield first, and some of those motherboard standoffs have to be moved from the case. After we've done that, we can screw in our motherboard. And you know what? It looks alright so far. The USB 3 header goes into the motherboard slot, along with the front panel audio, front panel connector, and USB-C. From our power supply, we connect our 24-pin and 4-pin CPU connector at the top. Our SSD plugs into the SATA port and SATA power connector.
What?
To get ready for our graphics card, we will remove the PCIe slot cover and the second and third expansion slots. And now it's time for our graphics card, which is not Intel, AMD or Nvidia. Here we have the More Threads MTT S80. This is a fully Chinese graphics card, kind of like the Jiaoxin CPU in that sense. It was released back in 2022 and featured some very good specs for the time. In fact, it was the first PCIe 5.0 card. The MTT S80 has 4096 Musa cores, which is More Threads' version of CUDA cores basically. It has a GPU clock of 1.8 GHz, 16GB of GDDR6 memory, PCIe 5.0x16, and it also has a TDP of 255 watts, and that's given by a CPU 8-pin power connector. In the box, we have an instruction sheet, the graphics card, and an 8-pin CPU to double 8-pin PCIe power adapter. And that's because for some reason, this card uses the CPU 8-pin power connector to power the card, kind of like a server GPU. I'm not really sure why they did this. The build quality of the MTT S80 is actually very good, and it features this fully metal design. It's got a lot of weight to it. We have one HDMI and 3 display ports on the card, so plenty of I/O connectivity to connect multiple monitors. So we'll just line up our graphics card and slot that in and then screw it in. We will then connect the two 8-pin PCIe connectors from the power supply by using that adapter. Our no Intel, AMD or Nvidia PC is now finished. Let's turn it on and... it doesn't work. On closer inspection, after removing the graphics card, we can see we have a 2E error code. After some digging around, and thanks to the PC Watch article about the KX7000 CPU, apparently this motherboard will only boot with DDR4 3200MHz RAM, and it can't be 3200MHz overclocked memory either that uses XMP or the likes of it. It has to be native JEDEC standard 3200MHz RAM. So after a lot of searching, this is what I got. It's a single 16GB stick of Samsung workstation memory clocked at 3200MHz, and it is CL22 at 1.2 volts, which means this should be the correct standard of RAM for our motherboard. I could only get one because it was hard enough finding this one stick at a decent enough price due to the RAM shortage. That will mean that we'll be limited to single channel, but we'll take that into account during the benchmarks. So we're going to connect our new RAM stick and then turn the PC on again.
We gotta rush as fast as we fucking can.
There we go. We have a BioSoft BIOS screen and it boots straight into Windows like a completely normal PC. Installing the drivers was kind of a pain because the Ethernet driver is not installed by default, so I had to get a USB stick and put the multi-core driver onto that. However, once we got that installed, we can get the graphics driver from the MoreThreads website, and surprisingly enough, it installed without any problems. We can now see our MoreThreads MTT S80 in the PES utility. Other drivers can be obtained from Xiaoxin's website, like the integrated graphics driver, because yes, this CPU even has integrated graphics. So now everything should be working as expected. On GPU-C, it correctly shows our MTT S80 and some of the specs. CPU-C gives us more information about our KX7000. It shows us the instruction sets and our motherboard, which is running at PCIe 4.0. Task Manager also correctly displays our Xiaoxin, Kaixin, KX7000, and also our MTT S80. The BioSoft BIOS is very standard, but does have resize bar enabled by default. And that's a good thing because we actually need it for our MTT S80 to actually work. In the memory tab, we can see why we have so much trouble with the type of RAM we were using. Basically, it's set at 3200 megatransfers per second by default, and the other options are 1600 megatransfers per second. Not exactly very useful. For the first
do it, King, do it.
789 and a multiple 2344, which is actually not too bad. I mean, it's not good either, but honestly, I didn't have high hopes for the Xiaoxin CPU. Just based off of this score, it's similar to that of the old i5s and i3s. It's a fair bit lower than the
that's alright by you guys,
but kind of similar to the Ryzen 2300X. The latest version of Cinebench
ping. Oh, you're the guy. I remember you. I remember you. I played with you. Played with you on my 15th alt account.
Does support AVX2,
yeah.
so I don't really understand.
20 alt accounts, man. Yeah, I don't sleep. I don't eat. I've never heard of a bathroom. I've never heard of food.
Man, we all do live in the fucking data center.
Dude, I don't know what this guy's doing. This guy's right in Dallas, bro. He's in the heart.
Which doesn't seem too bad at all. Let's move on to some games now.
Actually, I'm in the fucking Nevada.
MSI Afterburner doesn't show it. Luckily, the MoreThreads MTT S80 does support DirectX 12 now. When it first came out, it did
lobby, go ramp, fast.
This still doesn't mean that all games work well, let's say. Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p looks like this, and it only gives us 24.2 FPS on average. The 1% and 0.1% lows were awful.
For some reason, they know I'm there.
3 FPS respectively, and the game felt very bad.
Oh shit!
This low result is most likely caused by the MTT S80, as the
Yeah,
card
one on
is
ping,
still
one on
not
ping.
well optimized in a lot of games.
Double.
That's not to say the integrated graphics would be even better, they would probably be even worse. But if we had like an RTX 5070 or something paired with this CPU, I don't think the game would be too bad. Let's try Genshin Impact. This game has had driver optimizations from MoreThreads, so hopefully the game should play a little better. I have the game on the lowest settings at 1080p with the FPS cap at 60. Here we get 58 FPS on average, which is decent. But unfortunately, there is a lot of stuttering, even more so than Forza. The 1% and 0.1% low being at 4.4 and 3.2 FPS respectively. Turning the game up to high decreased our average FPS to 53. But the 1% and 0.1% lows were still pretty bad at 2.4 and 2 FPS. Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't even want to start, and neither did Spider-Man Remastered. Cyberpunk sometimes started, and that low settings 1080p with no resolution scaling, we were able to get 22.3 FPS, and it actually didn't stutter that much at all. Shadow of the Tomb Raider at low settings 1080p was not even playable at 12.2 FPS and terrible stuttering. At the lowest settings, it was slightly better at 21.3 FPS, but the 1% and 0.1% lows were still not great at 9.2 and 2.8 FPS. Resident Evil 3 usually runs pretty well on lower end hardware. Here we have the game on the low settings, 1080p, and it was fine at 44.7 FPS. Problem is the 1% and 0.1% lows were at 0.4 that's not really ideal. Rocket League was actually pretty good. We have the game on high quality 1080p and we're achieving 67.7 FPS on average. The 1% and 0.1% lows were at 43.2 and 35.7 FPS respectively, and it felt pretty smooth throughout. GTA 5 at high settings 1080p was playable, but not great at 21.8 FPS on average. So I turned the settings down to normal and it was somewhat better at 26.8 FPS, with a 1% low of 1.8 and a 0.1% low of 1.5 FPS. If you could ignore the stuttering on occasions, then it wasn't too bad. CS2 was one of the worst games to play on this PC. In a competitive game like CS, you really need a high FPS. But here on low settings 1080p, we got like 15 FPS. But what really made it impossible to play was the stuttering. You could barely even move at times. I finally tried Black Myth Wukong at 1080p low settings because apparently the MTT S80 has had driver optimizations for this game. And here we got 13.6 FPS on average, with a 1% and 0.1% low of 9 FPS. If this is the FPS with the optimizations, then I don't want to know what the game was like before. I mean, the game didn't stutter too much, but the FPS was way too low to actually have an enjoyable time playing the game. So overall, would I recommend the no Intel, AMD, and Nvidia PC? No, but at least there is an option to not use any of the three major CPU and GPU companies. I feel like our GPU, the Morthreads MTT S80, was holding our Jiaoshin CPU back in games, due to its bad driver optimizations. But then again, we can see the CPU scores, and the Jiaoshin CPU is still years behind the likes of Intel and AMD. I guess we'll just have to wait until the new CPUs and GPUs come out from Jiaoshin and Morthreads, to see if a no Intel, AMD, or Nvidia gaming PC will be possible for gaming. Thanks for watching.
Have fun.
I voted.
My bad. I had to go take a fucking piss.
Ah, I knew it.
He said shit. That was just a really long piss. My bad. 6.7. They need to rename that gun 6.7.
That's how we roll.
Buy some, gang. Got guns.
Come on, chop chop. Throwing smoke. Incendiary.
Outside of you. Hit a guy on top of silos.
The clear purple. Oh shit, that be.
Oh, no.
They pushed in the secret. One guy.
Calm down. Secret. Calm down, Squeaky.
They're in secret.
Okay, bomb is down and Squeaky.
No,
Couldn't
I hear you. I hear you. I'm right outside. Only have one secret. I'm done. Two guys, one secret. They're gonna go.
They're either gonna come up fucking vent or ramp. Yeah, what did I say? The grab bomb went ramp. Planning B.
Bomb has been planted.
Above.
Good shit.
Diffusing. Bomb has been defused. Counter-terrorists win. That's a piece of cake, so it is.
Yo, Yellow, I said they could have come up from vent, brother. And you're not watching vent.
You gotta make a bro.
It's okay, man. Just saying.
Move. Throwing fire.
Outside,
Enemy
yeah.
area out. Throwing fire.
Guy outside. Running across.
Position.
He just came in. He's in small.
Nice shot.
Flashbang.
One more minute.
Good.
Nice.
Bomb mini. There's an up, I think. Wait,
He's hot.
He's out.
What are did the guns explode because of the nade?
No, they just went somewhere else.
Stuff.
I swear I saw not.
Probably shot out into sight somewhere.
Yeah, I just got done aim training and I feel like I'm aim botting. I finally feel like my arm knows the spray. Like I can like, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
I'm about to hit a fat ass blinker, dude.
Just don't take a week off and don't forget.
Yeah, no. I know your name tag, bro. I know your name tag, gamer tag, bro.
Namer tag.
Gamer tag. Yeah, I googled your neighbor tag to the side police, man.
Nice, bro. Yeah. 3 guys outside.
Incendiary out.
I'm sorry.
Flashing out.
Deploying flashbang.
Flashing out.
So close.
Outside, dead.
Throwing smoke.
What's outside? Outside, point. Nice.
One more here.
1 minute, yo! I thought my guy was holding me. That's there.
I gotta drop,
Dude,
please.
FACEIT is so tight-knit community-wise. Like, I've run into the same people all the time. There's this dude fucking... His name's... Like, I'm gonna type his name. I always run into that dude on Dallas, bro. I always run into that dude. Always. And then
Never seen him.
I looked at his FACEIT, and you know how you can see, like, if they play, like, how many games they play a day, kind of? On the calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah. His thing was, like, full, like, the most darkest color you could have.
Ramp.
Squeaky.
Yeah, they're hard to be. I'm flanking. Yes! I got bomb! No, I lied.
One's down, one's bomb. What the hell? Bomb down on B. Bomb down on B.
Fuck, dude. He's
One's right here, yeah.
Flashbang.
What?
Why are we feeding him, bro?
Yeah, no, we're anything.
All right.
Why would I fucking hold from the air again?
Yo, stop feeding them, bro.
Yellow, sell that.
I think we should take that ID log.
Go.
I'm not going outside, dude. I'm getting fucked outside.
Okay, there you
Incendiary out. Grenade
go.
out.
Outside is some free bread, yo.
Throwing grenade. Down smoke.
Coming outside right now.
Throwing flashbang.
Yeah, he's just not blind.
You said yellow.
Laying down smoke. Throwing
They're
fire.
outside right now. They're going mid.
Bomb has been planted.
On B.
They're going secret now.
Double door.
You said double door.
Oh, what?
Multiple secret.
Defusing the bomb. Terrorists.
Bro, what? Why is there one still outside running behind me while I'm flanking one of them? That means only one of them's on site. What is their fucking map control, dude? They got two guys lurking on outside. No, they didn't even see me there. I was hiding in the smoke. They're fucking psychosis. They're fighting no one on outside. And it sold my flank because of that. Like, they're so
All new
shit.
accounts, by the way.
Yeah, they're so shit. It might have saved them, or I don't know. I don't know.
Throwing smoke.
Well, I mean, the thing about cheating is you can buy an old account. It doesn't. I don't know why.
Yeah, I know.
Throwing flashbang.
That's what I'm saying.
I think a new account looked more legit. I know. Because a cheater would have already like known
Squeaky.
where to get like accounts stick without a flash.
Outside red.
There's smoke coming in.
Deploying flashbang. Throwing flashbang.
Flash the fuck up myself.
Down vent, down vent.
One more outside.
What's up? Peek. In smoke maybe? In smoke? What up?
That was
Bro.
What up?
Fuck, man. No, they planted, right? It's on A.
What?
Top.
Bomb.
Terrorists win.
So Jason, when the round starts, practice your recoil because if you're gonna die with 2 mags, just use the first mag to practice your recoil. Not even shit talk. Like if you don't know how to spray, so you should practice. You're gonna die anyways because you're dying to spraying, so just practice in the beginning of the round anyways.
Let's go.
They're coming outside.
Grenade out. Throwing fire.
Oh god, no! Outside! No, no one's gonna peek with me ever! Oh, I'm just giving up outside forever. We're just gonna give them outside for the rest of our game. Yep.
He's past you.
This guy just reloaded instantly, I'm dead. Craziest reaction time I've ever fucking seen. Siege players, when they realize you can't pixel peek in CS2 because you can't wallbang the wall.
Terrorists win.
Brand new account, by the way.
Are we cooked?
Indecision. We are good to go.
I'm bushing, dude.
Sandisk earnings call? Oh my... Oh.
Okay.
Secret.
Terrorists win.
Let's get it.
Move it, son. Smoke. Laying down smoke. Throwing fire. Throwing a grenade.
They blew up.
Speaking of
door.
that.
Throwing fire.
Outside.
One Africa.
Outside or not.
Outside hard. On mini garage.
Nice.
Outside mini.
Yo, can you? He's swinging me. You gotta swing that, Cyan. Fuck.
They
I have
pushed
people
out one
inside
high.
fucking
Let's quickly.
mini.
They're on here.
Oh my god,
See,
bro. This
that's why
guy's
I'm gonna
long.
fucking peek it, dude.
Yeah, it's a little too late. It's a little too late, bro. A little too late. Kind of peeked after the fact.
I'm saying I can't peek when he's sitting in the smoke in front of me, dude.
He's showing out after you showing out late as fuck. Like that.
Hey, he's waiting on me to move. That's what I'm saying. He's
Hey.
literally sitting in the smoke. He killed a teammate sitting in the smoke.
Hey,
Nah,
you
man.
can spam the smoke. You know that, right?
Yeah, we also have free outside if you
If you
just
know
peek
he's in the
outside.
smoke, just shoot the fucking smoke.
Remember,
It's not like he was behind
this
a
is
wall.
bandit country. Shoot everything that moves. Flashbang, flashbang.
So
All outside. Close to your green. Close.
nice. He's lonesome,
Another
lonesome,
close. Another
lonesome.
close. He's on those boxes right in front of you somewhere.
Am I right or left? Clear. We're clear on outside. Oh, full clear on the outside. Where'd they plant? A? B? Bombs?
Hey.
Flanking lobby.
Fuck.
I'm flanking hut. Chill. Play slow.
Another one back aside.
Oh.
Terrorists win. Come on, let's go.
Do y'all have smokes for? I can do like 2 of them for outside.
I can do outside also.
Can we just
I'll drop
push
you.
ramp?
Yeah, let's fix smokes on outside push ramp. Actually, no, we can use them on side, so I'll just save them, I guess. His name's Perk XXX. He's like the most skid, loser, wannabe thug, fucking scripted cheat to user I think we're all gonna run into.
What are you saying right now, bro? You don't.
It's like what you say when cheaters don't make their own cheats. Those are terms for people who just use shitty public cheats that are gonna get them banned within a day. It's a pointless endeavor.
There's a guy single door.
Yep. Nice picture.
Fuck. Trophy flank. God damn it.
Watch your double.
Guy came out.
Nobody's
Double
looking
door.
flank. Nobody's looking flank.
Oh, now I am. Yep, point.
Terrorists win. You think you can kill us?
It's gonna sound stupid. These guys
Drop me
aren't.
smokes right here. I can smoke
I
all the way
got you.
across the lawn.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna go straight out of squeeze.
Let's play outside. We have long range guns. I'll drop you smoke.
We kill them, and then we go home. Smoke.
Someone gave me.
I'll flash you when you jump up green.
Go.
Flash him.
Alright.
I'm speaking outside.
Take that.
He's in the smoke.
Top.
Yeah, heaven.
What's my name? He's clear.
Drop me bomb
I
up.
think he's still heaven. I killed the one close on outside. We can flank B to go for a wrap plant. I'm gonna clear heaven. I have no audio. Wait, what the hell? I have no audio. Where do we plant? B? I have no audio. I can't hear anything. Why can't I hear my music in my game? What the hell? What? Huh? Let me restart my game. Audio. Change input on CS blinker. Okay, I tried to. I don't know what's going on. My bad. I just saw you. I got you, Gloobing. Gloobing Wong. You just pull up, yo? You just pull up? You're on YouTube? I'm on YouTube? Oh. Oh. Downloading content. I guess there's an update? What? Update mid... Oh, this is so not peak. Let me change my... Let me also fix my YouTube. I had no idea I was on YouTube right now. I would have made it pretty. Make me wanna cry. Do I even have a thumbnail? I have to update, bro. Are you serious? Okay. Dude, fuck off. YouTube is such a fucking retard. Oh my god, YouTube's made for dumb fucking bozos. No way, bro. No way. I'm clicking on gaming, bro. I hate that YouTube does this shit. Oh my god. Why am I not in? Oh my god. I hate everything going on right now. It's all pissing. My client is out of date. My client's out of date. What do you mean my client's out of date? What? What do you mean my client's out of date? We have to load this one? Dude, I'm mid-FACEIT game. What do you mean? What do you mean my client's out of date? To the latest version? I wasn't the latest version. What's going on? Oh my god, dude. This game's made by fucking dumb babies, dude. Actually dumb Nepo babies. Why does it always load as a shitty square? Why does it never work? Why is my audio out? Why do I have to update the game? Why is it saying I'm at an outdated client when I'm on an updated client and it just updated? Why is it bullshit? Why is it dog shit? Why is this $1 billion company wasting my time? You're gonna get me banned, dude. My game's cooked, GG. Why do you mean I can't claim this out of date? What? Oh my god, dude. Wow. Dude, what? I had to. Oh my god, this game. What? Are you serious? Oh god. I'm sorry, dude. It said my client was out of date and I had to backroll it. That was stupid, dude. What?
Building a gaming PC is pretty exciting stuff. You have your CPU, RAM, graphics card, among other components. But despite having a lot of choice of various components, most of these are going to be from three major companies. Firstly, Intel, which makes CPUs and fairly
The world is on fire, and nobody is looking where it really matters. Every headline screams about the Middle East, chaos, and global fear. The media wants you glued to the Strait of Hormuz and the rising price of oil. But it's a lie, a distraction. The real story is in Japan. In 2024, after 17 years, the planet's biggest creditor ended its era of free money. The engine of the global economy is sputtering in Tokyo. And if you have a mortgage, a savings account, or a 401k, you're in the crosshairs. Chapter 1, the demographic black hole. On the surface, Japan looks like it's already living in the future, a place where tech giants dominate the world stage. Robots share the streets with people. AI predicts what'll come next, and entire cities run smarter, cleaner, and faster than anywhere else. But look past the distractions, dim the neon signs, forget the shiny gadgets. Focus instead on the finances, the numbers. That's where Japan's deepest, darkest, most disturbing secrets lie. The demographic death spiral. Because in 2026, Japan's population officially sits at approximately 122.6 million people. That might sound like a lot, but in 2010, it was even higher, 128 million to be precise. Since the late 2000s, Japan has been on a steady, unrelenting decline. It's losing around 500,000 people from its population every single year. That's like the city of Atlanta vanishing every 12 months. To make matters worse, Japan also has the highest proportion of elderly citizens anywhere in the world. In 2014, close to 26% of the population was over 65. By 2022, that increased to more than 29%. The population is getting older while the birth rate is hitting its lowest level in more than a century. Fewer and fewer people are choosing to start families. Birth rates are falling. Meanwhile, the number of people of working age keeps shrinking. It's reached the point where now there are 2 deaths in Japan for every birth. That is a problem for a lot of reasons, especially for the economy. Every year that these trends continue, Japan's tax base disappears bit by bit. With more retirees, fewer families, and fewer people paying taxes, Japan's financial foundations are starting to crack. But the Bank of Japan saw this problem coming, and they acted in a way that was desperate, dramatic, unprecedented. They made money free. Instead of raising interest rates to fight the problem, they kept them at zero. At times, they went below zero. At the same time, trillions of yen were pumped into the system. The Bank of Japan became one of the biggest buyers of its own stocks. In effect, it socialized its stock market just to keep the lights on. It was a gamble, one with a massive amount of risk attached. No other central bank of any major developed nation around the world operated the same way as Japan's. But somehow the gamble paid off, at least for a little while. People and businesses didn't have to worry about paying back much more than they'd originally borrowed. Loans became almost irresistible. Families took them. Businesses took them. Everyone wanted in. Why wouldn't they? It was almost like free money. Wall Street hedge funds and investment firms took advantage too, but on a much bigger scale. They realized they could borrow huge amounts of the Japanese yen at 0% interest and convert all of that cash to dollars. They would then use that cash to buy US tech stocks, treasury bonds, or anything else they wanted. It was known as the yen carry trade, and it was like some sort of video game infinite money glitch, a seemingly foolproof way to guarantee returns. For a while, Japan retained its status as an innovative, pioneering, and world-leading nation in more ways than one. But as gamers know all too well, glitches get patched. The system couldn't last. The so-called stability it provided was, in actual fact, little more than just a band-aid slapped hastily over a gaping hole in a broken economy. It was only a matter of time until that sticking plaster began to peel away. Private investments went nowhere, wages stalled, public debt spiraled, reaching a staggering 260% of the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, by 2022. Soon, the Bank of Japan was running out of options, so they went further, much further. They forced 10-year government bond yields to stay at zero. The country was borrowing at home for nothing and then exporting those profits around the world, hoping that the inflation would never rise too fast. But in 2026, that gamble is coming to an end. Now Japan is left with an incredibly big bill to settle. First, the Widowmaker detonates. The Bank of Japan had hoped that it would never come to this, and for years it didn't. Crisis after crisis hit, and somehow it held. But anyone watching closely knew it couldn't last. It was never a question of if the bubble would burst, only when. A bomb had been planted, we just didn't know how long the fuse was. Now we do. The explosion is here, and the spark that started it all was rising costs of oil and energy. In 2026, crude oil prices have surged by close to 50%, and it's having an impact all over the world. For a resource-poor nation like Japan, rising rates are a death sentence. As prices rise, central banks of countries all over the world have been forced to take action. In the US, rates still sit at 3.75%. It's a similar story in the UK and across Europe, but elsewhere the pressure is building. Interest rates passed the 4% mark in Australia, 5% in India, and even close to 7% in places like Mexico and South Africa. And in the middle of all of this, Japan was trapped. On the one hand, it could raise rates but basically bankrupt its own government. It carries the highest debt-to-GDP ratio of any nation in the entire developed world. Or it could keep rates at 0%, but sacrifice the value of its currency in the process. Neither of these options was attractive. But the Bank of Japan had to pick one. It decided to persist with its 0% rate. And the results have been catastrophic. The yen has effectively gone into free fall. 5 years ago, in 2021, the yen was sitting at less than 110 to the dollar. But by late 2022, it was approaching 150. In April 2026, it's close to the 160 mark, hovering near its weakest point in decades. In just a few years, the Japanese currency has lost more than 30% of its value. For businesses, families, workers, it was devastating. Before they knew what hit them, salaries and savings were slashed. The money they had spent years earning was suddenly worth far less than it had been just a few years ago. It's just one of the ways the Japanese public has suffered. The cost to import goods to the country has also skyrocketed, leading to higher prices for numerous products and services. The more the Bank of Japan waited, the worse the situation would become. The yen would continue to spiral. They couldn't allow their own national currency to become worthless. They had to act. So, in a state of panic, policymakers made a decision almost 20 years in the making. They raised interest rates to 0.75%, with plans to increase them all the way up to 1% by 2027. It might not sound like much, and in isolation, it isn't. But compare it to the rest of the world, the US, the UK, Australia, rates of 2, 3, or 4% aren't uncommon. A rate of just 1% would actually be something of a freak occurrence. But for the Japanese financial system, 1% or even 0.75% is a seismic amount. It means that 17 years of free borrowing and free debt are coming to an end. And that doesn't just impact Japan and its people, it affects the whole world. For years on Wall Street, there was one investment strategy everyone had heard of. A strategy built on shorting the Japanese government bonds, betting that prices would fall and yields would finally rise. A gamble against decades of history. A bet that the Bank of Japan would finally break its own trend after years of stubbornly holding 0% interest. They called it the Widowmaker, and the name wasn't just for show. So many people who used this strategy ended up losing enormous amounts of capital because the Bank of Japan never did what they wanted it to do. It continued to maintain near zero or even negative rates year after year. But in 2025 and continuing into 2026, that all changed. The Widowmaker paid off. Trillions of dollars borrowed at nearly 0% in Japan have been flowing around the world, and now they're starting to seep away. The hedge funds and investors who were on the right side of the bet are making a fortune. Meanwhile, banks and firms that borrowed yen at 0% and poured it into risk assets or treasuries are scrambling to cash out while they still can. But while the top gets richer, the bottom pays the price. Everyday people, families, workers, and those who had no hand in the gamble are the ones footing the bill. Chapter 3. The Great Repatriation. This is the final nail in the coffin, the part that the media won't explain. They don't even want people to know about it until it's already too late. An event that is both catastrophic and almost invisible. A crash you won't see coming, but one that will shape the economic future of not just Japan, but the United States and dozens of other countries around the world. A shockwave that could be felt for years, even generations. The repatriation of the yen. The wealthiest and most important Japanese investors, including mega banks, pension funds, and insurance companies, are some of the biggest foreign holders of American debt. As a nation, Japan owns a whopping $1.2 trillion in United States treasuries. To put such an astronomical figure into perspective, $1.2 trillion is enough to fund the entire U.S. military for around 18 months. It's enough to end world hunger several times over. It is an insane amount of money, or to be more exact, an insane amount of American debt, all held in the hands of a single nation in a different continent. For years, it made sense for Japan's institutions to hold that debt. The Japanese Government Pension Investment Fund, or GPIF, is the world's biggest pension fund and has historically held on to a massive amount of foreign bonds. The Treasury made up 51% of its foreign bond portfolio in 2025. There was a logic to that decision. U.S. bonds paid interest while Japanese bonds the rising those rates are closer to 1%, and the 10-year Japanese government bond yield rose past 2%. The math is Japanese institutions GPIF continue to run the risk of American debt while putting it in its own government bonds instead. These companies, these pension funds, no longer have the same incentive to earn the book. Domestic investments finally pay off. It doesn't take 5 years to see the obvious. But growing exodus. It is cash. It's selling off its assets, dumping U.S. Treasury holdings at a record rate. That doesn't mean the entire $1.2 trillion will disappear overnight, but billions are starting to evaporate. Those billions will quickly turn into tens or hundreds of billions as weeks go by. The ripples won't just stay in Japan. They'll spread across markets, across borders, across the Pacific. That's when the biggest provider of U.S. debt. Who's going to fill the void? The simple answer is no. It's not at first. To attract new buyers and convince the world to absorb the debt, the Federal Reserve will be forced to act. Rates will have to go up. And when that happens, everything else is affected. Mortgage rates, credit card interest rates soar. You're suddenly faced with spiraling costs. Everything becomes more expensive. Spending power diminishes and disposable income vanishes. Meanwhile, the stock market starts to bleed. Government bonds are far more attractive than risky bets like tech stocks. Money begins to move fast. For years, the yen carrier was greasing the wheels of the entire global financial machine. It kept everything running smoothly. It allowed those Wall Street hedge funds to borrow billions and pump it all into big businesses across America. Now those same funds are seeing their borrowing costs explode. They're backed into a corner, and they're running out of options. They're forced to sell their most profitable companies. Shares in companies like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, they're all down. This is the invisible crash. It doesn't generate the headlines it involves like an stock exchange or vast crowds of people protesting in the streets. It happens quietly in the background, and the world has no idea. Chapter 4, the sovereign debt trap. It kept profitable positions. Shares in companies like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, they're all covers yen. This is an invisible crash. It doesn't dominate the headlines. It doesn't involve the New York Stock Exchange. For nearly 20 years, the is just between both dangerous, both unavoidable. The ultimate sovereign debt trap. It either keeps interest rates low and protects its debt, but watches its currency collapse and its country starve, or it raises rates and temporarily saves its economy, but it sets its own national debt on fire, as well as detonating the entire global bond market. There is no out, no alternative option, no last-ditch magical solution. The fuse was lit a long time ago, and now it's reached the powder keg. The yen is just the first domino to fall, but it won't be the last. The dollar is next, and when that begins, everything changes, which leads to a question the world has quietly been avoiding. What if the US economy crashes? Leads to
ASUS, the dominant motherboard producer, trusted by gamers for being premium and reliable. But they were wronging customers for years. This is how ASUS was screwing consumers, and how one YouTuber caught them red-handed, not once, but twice, and even confronted them face to face. Red-handed, not once, but twice, and even confronted them face to face. ASUS was at the top of the game. Out of 37 million projected motherboard sales, 50 million were from ASUS, with Gigabyte far behind at 9 million. ASUS even held over 38% of the global market share and was a $10 billion company, and perhaps even stronger was their reputation. They were the enthusiast's choice. They were innovative, reliable, and had great performance. Their gaming brand, Republic of Gamers, is also huge. And ASUS isn't just motherboards either. They compete across the full stack: GPUs, laptops, monitors, gaming handhelds, pretty much every product line in PC gaming. But soon, cracks in ASUS's pristine brand began to show. In early 2023, users were noticing AMD Ryzen CPUs, specifically the 7000X 3D line, were physically bulging and charred. Users were, understandably, very alarmed. When investigated, the community found a common factor: ASUS, specifically the ASUS 7800X 3D motherboard. Customers began to compile more cases of this. What was going on? Well, that question brings us to ASUS's worst nightmare. In the comments of one of the posts, a user asked if they could buy both the board and the CPU to investigate. This was Gamers Nexus, a hardware review and a tech journalism channel, and soon they revealed their findings.
We conducted internal failure analysis. We saw scorch marks in the same spot on 3 dead CPUs, the center of the IO die and the edge of the CCD, and that immediately pointed us to the root cause. Holy shit, it's at 35 amps. Oh, it's on fire. Yeah, I can smell it.
Here's what happened. In the ASUS BIOS, or Basic Input-Output System, there's an overclock setting called Expo, which allows RAM to run at its high advertised speeds instead of the default slower speeds. Gamers often overclock their components to get the most performance out of them. When you overclock with a setting like Expo, the motherboard also needs to increase a separate voltage called SOC, which runs through the CPU. But ASUS was setting this way too high. The BIOS on the ASUS motherboard showed 1.35 volts, already high for an AMD CPU. But physically measuring the motherboard, Steve from Gamers Nexus showed the real number was between 1.39 or even 1.4 volts. Doesn't sound like much, but it was enough to physically burn the CPU.
That's not supposed to be like that. And the reason to blast the SoC voltage like this largely comes down to laziness. It's the lazy way to ensure that there's wide compatibility without finer, deeper tuning to the BIOS in order to get the memory compatibility that they want.
Yet ASUS, somehow in attempting to fix it, was about to make the problem much worse. ASUS sent out a BIOS version 1410, and users noticed something very strange. ASUS does not give any warranties as to the suitability, compatibility, or usability of the UEFI, its firmware, or any of its content. That's right. While rolling out a fix, they quietly added that downloading it would void your motherboard warranty. Insane. But it somehow gets worse. ASUS noted that any intentional manipulation can damage the processor, socket, and motherboard. They're technically right, but here they're referring to Expo. There's intentional manipulation, and then there's running Expo, a heavily marketed, widely used feature. ASUS also quietly removed the older BIOS versions from their download page. So customers could stay on the original BIOS and risk burning their CPU, or install the fix and lose their warranty. Great. Either way, ASUS wins. At least, that's probably what they thought.
ASUS, that's not how any of this works. You don't ship a product that kills other products which are attached to it, and then ship an update that says, oopsie, now it won't kill the things that it attaches to anymore or itself, and it's resolved. But also, if you install this, you omit or forego your warranty. It's like it puts them in a better situation.
Steve also pointed out that if you did follow ASUS's guidance to not use Expo, you'd see major performance drops. You know, on the big fancy gaming motherboard you spent hundreds of dollars on. This follow-up video passed 1.1 million views in just 1 month, and soon it began to spread.
ASUS just made it super obvious that they are a company that is no longer worthy of allowing them to sponsor us or your money.
For those who dare, went from a live, love, laugh marketing tag to an actual threat. Awesome. I don't understand how ASUS went from slightly more expensive but feature-rich and reliable a decade ago to overpriced gimmicks and missing out on important features. Massive shame. ASUS used to be one of the brands I could trust. It was all falling apart, including ASUS's prestigious reputation. The thing is, even with the burning socket, things could have been very different.
And that's the sad part, because ASUS is a brand that has the brand presence and power and money to come out and turn this into a massive marketing win.
So, what happened? ASUS released a statement. We want to address the concerns that have been raised by our users about whether recent BIOS updates will impact the warranty of ASUS AM5 motherboards. They outlined that contrary to their BIOS update, the warranty would cover the motherboard including Expo use. Though it doesn't seem like there was compensation for those who already had burned CPUs. And unfortunately, this was just the beginning. This, somehow, wasn't even the worst thing ASUS would do. And guess who was about to catch them red-handed? But this time, it would be different, and would set up a long string of dominoes, ending with Steve confronting ASUS face to face. Something ASUS is unfortunately known for is bad customer service. They will look for any way to void your warranty and even damage your device themselves. I sent my laptop for repair. The problem was fixed, but I received it back with new damages. There is now a dent on the back of the screen that wasn't there before, and there are slight bulges on the left and right sides of the trackpad. Not only are customers' devices treated poorly, but they also try to make customers pay for something that should actually be covered by the warranty. To be honest, the entire process feels like dealing with a fraudulent company that is trying to scam you. This was shockingly common, but there wasn't much people could do. They were negligent and slow, but ASUS had all the power here. The problem though is that every now and then you stumble onto someone who flips the power dynamic. Just 1 year after the burning CPU scandal, Gamers Nexus sent in a defective ROG Ally handheld. But unbeknownst to ASUS, this would be an experiment, and they documented everything.
In addition to super high resolution photos, we also took microscope shots of the PCBs, the connectors, we logged the level of stripping on the screw heads, and we logged any damage of our own to the plastics. We also removed our SSD, because our advice to anybody sending a device in for repair of any kind is to remove the drive.
As soon as ASUS received the ROG Ally, the red flags appeared.
The same day, ASUS emailed us with this, quote, "We would like to inform you that your product is out of warranty or judged as customer-induced damage, CID, thus the repair charge shall be applied. Our service center will contact you with more detail." There was no way for us to respond to this. They don't have an option to reply, and in fact, the email was sent from a no-reply mailbox, which if you reply to it, gets bounced as failed to send.
ASUS claimed the device had signs of damage which is not covered under warranty. So, what was the damage? But it gets even weirder.
There is no presented option to reject the unnecessary paid-for repair and accept only a free repair covered under their own explicit policy.
ASUS did not even acknowledge the real problem, the joystick issue which was under warranty. And ASUS said that if payment wasn't received, it would be sent back unrepaired and even disassembled. You would send ASUS a faulty product, they would ignore it, void your warranty, charge you for something else, then threaten to send you back a truly unusable product.
Many of these companies are breaking the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. The way the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act works is the manufacturer must prove, the burden of proof is on them, when voiding your warranty, that you broke the device. They cannot have a warranty void if removed sticker, and they cannot say, well, you replaced the battery on your MacBook, therefore no warranty when your CPU or GPU dies, which is very common if you own an Apple product.
But what made all this worse was the time pressure.
ASUS will consider the customer to have declined the service if no reply is received, so you have 3 days to decide whether you want to do, whether you want to pay or not pay. And as you are going back and forth with ASUS, that during that entire time period, they are not actually pausing that 3 days. The best thing about this piece of shit garbage company here is that they will not only send back the unit unrepaired, but disassembled, meaning that you will go from having a unit with a minor joystick problem to a unit that is unusable.
ASUS, eventually after a lot of persuasion and confusing, contradictory emails, finally fixed the product. But here's the bigger problem. Steve didn't just get unlucky. These are routine for ASUS. Someone shared that a repair quote for an RTX 4090, which had just a tiny dent by the way, was 3,728 Canadian dollars. For context, you could buy the same card new for $2,799. In just 1 week, Gamers Nexus's video passed 1.5 million views. To date, it's over 2.3 million.
It actually looks like it's number 8 on trending, so good on him to be getting ASUS in trouble for this garbage behavior.
ASUS's fraud was blown wide open, and everyone's eyes were on them. So, how did ASUS respond? On May 16, 2024, 5 days after the video, ASUS issued a statement. A weird one. Currently, we perform a full analysis of devices sent for RMA and send customers a comprehensive list of available repairs, free and paid, in our messaging to customers. We understand that this may have caused confusion when a customer has only ordered a specific repair. We will no longer automatically offer repair quotations for cosmetic imperfections. We deeply apologize to our customers and the community for any confusion and frustration they might have experienced from this. Apparently, it was the customers who were confused, and ASUS was simply and graciously giving consumers their options when overcharging for non-existent damage, voiding your warranty, and threatening to send back your device unassembled. People weren't happy, understandably so. The backlash began to escalate. Soon, on May 23rd, they released another statement. A more comprehensive overhaul to repairs, promises of better communication, documentation, changes to repair prices, all of which were notorious before, but customers still weren't convinced. This is just a PR stunt to make it look like they care, and that they're doing something. They won't change. This is who they are. From now on, ASUS goes on my warranty scanner list. Was anything
Let's call my brother. Let's roll.
Really? 2 years later, going to happen, customers had to make a but not to ASUS, to the Federal Trade Commission. The page details steps to file a complaint along with everything a customer would need to know, and that's not all. We have begun the process of connecting with congressional and senatorial representatives, are contacting the Federal Trade Commission, and have begun interviews with experts and advocates for consumers on these matters. This was a big problem for ASUS because they had already been on the FTC's watch list. They were one of 6 companies to receive a warning letter about illegal warranty terms. In the meantime, however, Gamers Nexus was going to confront ASUS face-to-face in Taiwan. In their statements, their promises of changes were just broad statements. What were they actually going to fix? Across 2 different discussions over 3 hours, Steve pressed ASUS on answers and commitments to improve RMA to make them accountable. And while there were some breakthroughs, the results were mixed. At the very least, Steve twisted their arm into agreeing to a list of changes. Then, a month later, in July 2024, the FTC sent a new round of warning letters to companies about making warranties void, including ASRock, Zotac, and Gigabyte. Though, not ASUS, although they had already received a warning from the FTC in 2018. And that brings us to ASUS today. Has anything changed? There are signs of improvement. ASUS opened a new email where customers with past disputed warranty claims could submit them for re-review. And ASUS, to their credit, went back and settled over 120 cases and reached out to over 300 customers who were incorrectly overcharged. A new repair center also opened in North America, instead of passing repairs to third parties at a lower cost. There's also more clarity, and any customer-induced damage cases have much more scrutiny. They've simplified the RMA search system and removed shipping fees for mixed repairs. A lot of good stuff to ASUS's credit, but it's not perfect. It seems like a few things are slipping through. In December 2025, a customer sent a ROG RTX 5090 to RMA after random black screens. ASUS declined the warranty due to a crack so small it was only visible under a microscope. They quoted 4,661 Canadian dollars to replace the card. Even though brand new, it usually retails around 4,059 Canadian dollars. Even after months of back and forth, the best they could do was a 50% discount, even though it should be under warranty at no cost. Customers are still nervous about buying ASUS, and I don't blame them. The damage has been done. ASUS betrayed customers' trust. They tried to cut costs and avoid warranties wherever possible, and the reputation has taken a huge hit. They're still making money, of course, but dedicated fans and enthusiasts have moved on, and many will never return. It's going to take a long time to rebuild that trust, if ever. The crazy thing is that this isn't even the first time Steve from Gamers Nexus has gone head-to-head with a tech giant. If you want to hear about the Newegg controversy, check out this video. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one. But until then, Evernote, one of the biggest and most ambitious products in tech history. 225 million users, hundreds of millions in funding, and a goal to pass 1 billion users and become a 100-year startup. But now, no one uses it or even remembers it. What happened to Evernote? Think about how you take notes. You open your phone, write it down, or take a picture. Before the smartphone, it was pretty chaotic. Everything you wanted to remember, shopping, errands, and address, you wrote it down or just had to remember. Some people would bring a physical notebook to do so, and if you had to keep receipts for reimbursement, like gas, you literally had to hold on to those receipts. Then you'd lose them or couldn't find which notebook they were in. That's the problem Stephen Pachakov wanted to solve. Pachakov had spent years building handwriting recognition software, technology that ended up in pretty much every tablet and stylus device. If software could recognize handwriting, why stop there? Why not build something that could recognize everything? Then, in 2008, after 6 years of building and prototyping, he had Evernote. Evernote was designed as a kind of brain backup. Once installed, you could store anything: business cards, receipts, handwritten notes, name tags, and the software would make them searchable. You could even take photos without text, and Evernote would tag them by context and location. Your phone can do this today, but this was 2008. Being able to search receipts, handwritten notes, even photos, this was unbelievable. This was a game changer. Pachikov understood another quiet fear in business: forgetting names. If you didn't grab someone's business card, networking was extremely difficult. So just scribble down their name and number and search for it with Evernote. I really like the concept of endless tape, and for many years I was looking for some suitable database to conveniently record all sorts of memos, jokes, notes, tasks, whatever. This quest has become one of the prerequisites for the birth of the Evernote concept. Even though Evernote was invite only at the time, demand was growing quickly. So on June 24, 2008, Evernote officially launched as a public cloud-based application, and oh boy was it growing. By the end of that year, it had over 500,000 users, 14 million notes, and multiple platforms including a strong mobile version. But there's another reason Evernote was taking off. To find out, we need to briefly step back to the most important change in Evernote's history. In May 2007, Pachikov stepped down and handed control to Phil Libin, believing he would be the better CEO. Libin pushed for the freemium model. He wanted everyone using Evernote, and this gave them the best chance of that. We don't care if you pay, we just want you to stay around and keep using it and get all your friends to use it. The longer you use the product, the more likely you are to fall in love with it, and sooner or later, you'll be happy to pay for it. And he was right. Within a year of launch, Evernote had been downloaded 1.7 million times on desktop alone, with over 1 million active users. Evernote was exploding, but Libin had much bigger plans for Evernote. In the meantime, Evernote raised $9 million from angel investors and began preparing for its first major venture round, something that was far from easy at the time. But there was one other factor driving this growth: timing. Evernote launched alongside the rise of the iPhone, the best device to showcase Evernote's power. By 2010, Evernote was available on Windows, Mac, iPhone, and BlackBerry with over 3 million users. And by the end of 2011, Evernote was even profitable. Annual sales were 16 million. It was the 2011 Company of the Year. It then rose to 80 million users and raised $250 million. Evernote was now worth $1 billion. Everything was going great. But here's where things get a bit weird. Phil Libin had a massive vision for this company. So much ambition, in fact, that it would eventually cause Evernote's downfall. Evernote wasn't the first startup Phil Libin had run. It was his third, but this time he was determined to make it his last. Not just as a successful company, but as a lifelong startup. Our goal is to build a 100-year startup. We're about 4.5 years into that, 4.5% done. He also said the team had no exit strategy, meaning no plans to sell to a bigger company as many startups do. They had big plans for an IPO and a vision of 1 billion users. Libin had a lot of vision for the world of tech as well.
The line between consumer and business is completely fading. In fact, I think that 5 years from now, there will be no such thing as a successful enterprise software company that's not also a successful consumer software company or even product company. Because I think like modern knowledge workers are going to demand the same quality experience everywhere in their lives. And so it's the same people who use Evernote in their personal lives and who use it at work.
Keep these claims in mind because they'll be important later. With Libin's ambition, Evernote began to expand a lot. Being a 100-year startup meant constantly launching or acquiring new productivity software, and launch they did. First, Evernote Sketch, a visual note app, then Penultimate, a popular handwriting app. Then came Evernote Trunk, an ecosystem connecting over 200 third-party apps. So, what's the problem? Well, Evernote was expanding out, wide but not deep. Soon, it felt like anything you can imagine had an Evernote version, from Evernote Food to Evernote Hello to Evernote Work Chat to Evernote Business. Evernote was no longer just a note-taking app. Somehow, it was trying to become a lifestyle brand. Even though Evernote had over 1 million paying customers at the time, the cracks were forming. Every expansion and every acquisition meant more hiring, more scaling, more expenses, more need for revenue. A hungrier Evernote, which brings us to a flaw in Liben's plan. Many users just weren't upgrading to premium because they didn't have to. So in 2016, the company restricted the free version while raising prices for paid plans. The economics of Evernote didn't make sense until this point, as most users had no real incentive to move to a premium subscription. Users weren't too happy, especially those who had years of memories, now heavily restricted, though there were many more problems. With Evernote growing wider, execution quality was lagging, bugs piled up, updates stagnated, and marketing seemed to outweigh product development. Users flooded Evernote's forums with complaints. Editing notes on the web is painful. If I paste text, the screen jumps back to the top. If I paste a list, it gets indented with a blank top line. If I try to delete the blank line, it deletes what's before it. If you have a developer at Evernote try to write a simple article in the editor, they will find how subpar the editor is. And it's so obvious. Evernote. Sorry, their new privacy policy means I'll be moving my notes somewhere else. Their new privacy policy means I'll be moving my notes somewhere else. They aimed for engineers to pick through. Evernote went into damage control. After receiving a lot of customer feedback expressing concerns about our upcoming privacy policy changes over the past few days, Evernote is reaffirming its commitment to keep privacy at the center of what we do. But the damage was done. The 100-year startup was looking a bit shaky, and unfortunately, it was about to get worse. While Evernote had been stumbling, their competitors had been working hard to make them obsolete. You've probably been thinking something throughout this video. Evernote basically does what Google Keep or Apple Photos does. And you're right. Search for a word like dog or grandma in your photos and it should be pretty accurate. Even receipts or texts, most apps can handle that. And it's not just photos either. Pretty much everything Evernote does has a better competitor. Simple Note, Apple Notes, Notion, Microsoft OneNote, Joplin, Obsidian, the list goes on and on. Also, most had little constraint on users who don't pay a subscription. Microsoft's OneNote went as far as introducing a data migration tool for Windows users wanting to make the switch. Were these apps better? Maybe. They lacked some features Evernote had, but they were better in the ways that mattered. Most of them were simpler, cheaper, easier to use, and more reliable. And this was a huge problem for Evernote, which was still having all kinds of issues. By the mid to late 2010s, Evernote was openly restructuring, laying off staff and replacing leadership. Liben, the architect of the 100-year startup vision, stepped down as CEO in 2015 and left the company entirely in 2016. 2 years later, it was even more dramatic. The CTO, CFO, CPO, and head of HR all exited within 2 weeks. And this was right as Evernote was trying to secure more funding. Then in 2018, they changed CEOs again. Evernote was collapsing, and there were multiple reasons. The new CEO, Chris O'Neill, said, "We committed too many resources too quickly. We built up areas of our business in ways that have proven to be inefficient. Going forward, we are streamlining certain functions like sales so we can continue to speed up and scale others like product development and engineering." He was right, but it was too late. Evernote laid off 15% of its staff, which brings us back to Liben's grand vision for tech. He believed the line between business and consumer products would disappear, but he was only half right. Evernote's business model was focused on consumer-first growth, relying heavily on popularity and a strong public image. It worked, but big tech companies like Google and Microsoft sold directly to businesses and made much more money, better margins, and a better conversion rate. In a 2019 survey asking, "How disappointed would you be if you could no longer use Evernote?" the product scored just 23%, with only 64 out of 277 respondents saying they would be very disappointed. Only 21% reported using it every day, while over 75 respondents used it just once per month. Evernote was supposed to be a daily product. This was bad. Yet by this point, Evernote had reached 225 million users. A lot, but the highest it would ever go. Evernote began to fade into irrelevance. Users left, downloads declined, then it was acquired. The app is still around. Some people use it, but it's now just a shell of its former self. Things haven't improved much either. Evernote wasn't killed by any one single app. They had just lost focus. They pivoted left and right, adding new features and new toys that most people didn't care about. They went wide and shallow instead of narrow and deep. While they were distracted, they neglected their core product and customers, so those customers went elsewhere. Not only that, they bet on consumer revenue and thought they could win both the business and consumer markets, and they didn't. The lines were blurred, but not as much as Liben thought. Instead of building a product that's secure, reliable, and fast, Evernote has spread itself too thin, trying to build out its install base across as many platforms as possible in an attempt to fend off its inevitable competition. It doesn't matter if your product is first or even the best. Dominance is temporary. You have to keep winning a customer over and over with less friction than anyone else. Another company which exploded, then seemingly disappeared, was Wish.com. Their ads were everywhere, and they even got an offer from Bezos himself. The story of Wish is even wilder. Click here to learn the rest of the story. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
You're stuck in traffic, heart racing, blood pressure through the roof. You finally reach the office. The awkward hellos, revolving doors, your first caffeine fix of the day, and then back in the car. 15 minutes later, you're home, where the real work happens. Going home before the workday even starts? It's happening all over the world, and it's driving some of the richest bosses crazy. Why? And does it mean the office as we know it is dying? I'm Josh, and on today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're asking, what is the future of working from home? There's a phenomenon known as coffee badging. It mostly shows up in technical and professional roles, jobs where people are expected to come into the office. In the US in 2023, that meant about 70 million, roughly 44% of the entire workforce. So, a lot of people. The short story is that coffee badging is a long-lasting side effect of the global pandemic. It's about showing your face and flashing your badge to your boss or to the admin, and it looks like you're at the office all day. But really, you're back home doing exactly the same work you would be doing if you were just stuck in a cubicle. For the person doing the hustle, no harm's been done. They'll say they're just as productive working in their SpongeBob underwear as they are in a shirt and pants. So what's the problem? Bosses versus workers, the battle for the office. The truth is, many of the world's biggest business owners just aren't on board. Statistically, no one who works behind a desk these days wants to be stuck in the office 5 days a week. A 2024 poll by the remote job website FlexJobs found that 51% of respondents said ideally they'd want to be fully remote. They want to avoid the office completely. 46% of the other respondents said that they'd prefer a hybrid model, a little bit of office, but 2 or 3 days working from home.
I love CS. It's more tactical than anything I've ever played. The mechanics are so crisp and satisfying. And it's so competitive where every time you lose, it's because you didn't play well enough. It's not down to your teammates. Or at least that was true back in CSGO. And anyone who's played a lot of CSGO and now some CS2 can tell that CS2 doesn't kind of feel right. The game's more random. It feels less crisp and it's much less tactical. I'll get into why I think that's the case during this video. But ultimately, I want CS2 to be better. And for that to happen, I need to answer a single question. What exactly is wrong with CS2? Let's go through the problems with the game in exact terms and suggestions on how I would fix those problems. But by the end of the video, I will devolve into ranting and baseless speculation on why Valve have made the choices they have. There's going to be a central theme around my criticism, which is based, funnily enough, around the words of Gaben.
You'd be sitting in a design review and somebody say, that's not realistic. And you're like, okay, what does that have, explain to me why that's interesting, because in the real world, I have to write up lists of stuff I have to go to the grocery store to buy. And I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun. And so we had to come up with some notion of what fun was. We knew it was an ad hoc definition, and it was the degrees to which the game recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions. The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me, it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So it is to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices. Yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you. If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you, right? You have to have this sense of the game acknowledging and responding to the choices and actions and progressions that you've made. Otherwise, it loses any sort of impact.
So in that clip, Gaben's talking about how reinforcement matters, how the game needs to be...
Wait. This guy...
responsive to player actions. And my arguments for changes to CS2 will all center around that point, that responsiveness and reinforcement do matter. And all the biggest failings of CS2 are related in some way to how unresponsive the game can be. The biggest failings of CS2 are related in some way to how unresponsive the game can be. The movement feels floaty, and therefore unresponsive. The shooting in CS2 is much harder to tell when your bullets actually land, and therefore you're always later to respond to what's happening on your screen. The models are just more difficult to read, and if they're more difficult to read, they're more difficult to respond to. Even the grenade throwing is just more delayed than it was in CSGO.
Is this what Rob wants? Is this what Rob was watching whenever they made this update?
Go over the base and simply tell fine.
Oh.
Then layer different for each animated typeface. If you want, you can offset the endpoints of each character to create a staggered animation. And there you have it. You'll notice that Animography Controller created a new folder called Written. This holds all the characters that are linked to your controller. When you create it, and a library of JSX files. Both formats contain exactly the same design and animation, but work slightly different. Let's have a look at the AEP file first. Simply open it or import it into your current project. You'll get a little pop-up telling you to update the file. This is because it's made to be compatible all the way back to CS6, and you're most probably working in a newer version of After Effects. In the project panel, you'll find folders with all the characters of the typeface. Everything is neatly organized in order to quickly find what you're looking for. If we open up a character comp, let's say the A, we'll find all the layers of artwork and animation, and a controller layer to customize the typeface. But we don't want to touch that here, so let's close the A comp again. In order to apply the animated typeface, simply drag and drop the characters you need onto a new project. With the controller layer selected, open up the effects panel to access the customizable settings. These are different for each animated typeface. If you want, you can offset the endpoints of each character to create a staggered animation. And there you have it. You'll notice that Animography Controller created a new folder called Written. This holds all the characters that are linked to your controller. When you create a new word, be sure to use fresh characters from the main typeface folders. A different way to set up your type is with Font Manager, a tool with lots of features specifically designed to enhance the workflow of animated typefaces. We can skip all the manual steps we just did by simply selecting a typeface from Recognize Time Off, link certain characters to. With Font Manager, you can even unlink certain characters to change individual settings. Even more convenient is the way Font Manager handles typefaces in the JSX format. Unlike the classic AEP format,
Soldier Boy is one of the most popular characters in The Boys despite being an antagonist. When he showed up in Season 3, he instantly became a fan favorite, and the showrunner clearly feels the same way about him because Gen V just got cancelled, but the other spin-off show, VOT Rising, which is all about Soldier Boy, is still expected to come out. And now he's back in the final season, and he's more important to the story than anyone ever expected. So what are they actually planning on doing with this guy? Like, why bring him back now? Are they gonna give him a redemption arc like A-Train and Queen Wave? Because how is that even possible? He's like super racist and has a long list of horrible things he's done, as do most characters in The Boys. So I've gone through and found every single thing we know about Soldier Boy to figure out what exactly they're planning on doing with Soldier Boy's character arc in the final season of The Boys. If you haven't already liked the video and subscribed, do that right now. And we can start by establishing every horrible thing that Soldier Boy has done to
What?